That lovely face you see in front of you, which over the years has aged from when she was a young girl and when I first met her, and but it's still a very good-looking face. You know, you've aged miraculously. And this is my ex-wife, Ronnie Bennett, a name she got because she married me and then didn't want to change it because she started using it professionally, and why not? Did you ever legally change it to Bennett? Yes, I believe you did.
I did. It was kind of a roundabout process, but yes, I did.
Now, so it's funny that two people are sitting here, one named Bennett, the other one named Bennett, and mine is not my legal name.
That's true. That's true. People ask where I have to go through that long explanation every once in a while when someone asks me where I got the name Bennett.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you got it as part of a divorce settlement, I believe. It was in the it was in the divorce settlement that you could continue to use Bennett.
Oh, well, I haven't read it since the divorce, and
well,
you know that was about 50 years ago.
Oh, I barely read it when we were getting divorced.
Oh.
But anyway. So how you doing? First of all, you know, I mean, I've told my audience about your situation. We talked about it once before, which you came down with a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, had this operation where they gutted you like a carp.
Pretty much.
Pretty much you healed, and a lot of people probably like to know where it stands now.
Well, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, one of the doctors told me that blood tests could not find any cancer, but blood tests are not definitive. And so a week ago, today, maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a CAT scan, a CT scan, which is the kind of scan, you know, that pictures are sliced, minusculely thick, and there is no cancer.
Bravo.
Now, do you understand what a great thing this is? That first of all, only 10% of pancreatic cancer patients can have the surgery. That it could be done at all, and it's pretty much the only treatment. And even then, pancreatic cancer is not very easy to take care of, but or try to get rid of. So it's gone for now. I will go for the rest of my life 3 times a year or so for another CAT scan to see if they can find any other cancer, and it does recur. So 3 times a year I won't sleep for a week before the CT scan.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think what's going to happen is after a certain amount of time, I guess you're going to get used to the fact that that test is coming up, and it's not going to be as apprehensive, you know. I mean, you can't, you know, it's great that you've gotten this diagnosis. And so at this point, you've got to say, well, at least for the time being, I'm not going to live in fear. You know? Or am I full of shit?
We'll see how it works out the
or
next
am I
time
full
I'm
of
coming
shit?
around for the next test. I'll let you know then.
Yeah. The only chronic diseases that I have are imaginary. So that's mine.
I remember.
Yeah.
You had a lot of them when we were married.
Yes. So anyway.
I assume you've only just added to them since?
Oh, believe me. And some that actually things that aches and pains that really do exist, but are so minor in comparison to what you had. You know, what you had, when you told me you had pancreatic cancer, I went, well, that's it. You know, because it's usually a death sentence. And in your case, miraculously, you're, at least at this point, you're clear of cancer.
Yes. And I've been lucky every step of the way. First of all, that they discovered it soon enough. That's the biggest problem with pancreatic cancer, is that it's very hard to diagnose, so that by the time they get to it in 90% of patients, it's too far gone for them to be able to treat. And there really isn't any other treatment besides the Whipple procedure and followed up by chemo.
Right.
And I only got half the chemo I was supposed to have because it was tearing up my insides. So we stopped it.
Okay, so
they stopped it.
Yeah. So you know, let's turn this into a political discussion. Coming right off of that, so how did you pay for your 20%? Because you're on Medicare, so Medicare took care of 80%, right?
but I also have supplemental insurance that pays that 20%.
Yes. So,
or most of it.
So
most of it.
Basically, your out of pocket was negligible.
Negligible, except for prescription drugs, which I take an enormous number of prescription drugs now. Not so many different ones, about 7 or 8 different ones, but I have to take them many times a day at certain times.
Yeah.
I have to have a chart up in the kitchen of which ones I take at what time of day. And those, you choose a Part D plan that helps pay for prescription drugs every year. And I had used the same one for many years because I never had prescription drugs. So you don't know. If you don't take drugs, you don't know what might happen to you, so you have no idea of how to change the coverage. This year, although now that I had all the drugs, I gritted my teeth, and it took 2 full days of going through all the stuff at Medicare online about the Part D prescription drug programs, and put in the drugs that I take, the names of them, and all this stuff. And I found a program or a coverage that looked like it would cost me quite several $100s less than the one I still had. So I took that coverage. You can never be absolutely sure because these things are they make it so difficult to read. But I was pretty sure. And the first time, just a couple of weeks ago, that I had to fill in one prescription drug that I have to take before every meal or snack for the rest of my life, I had been paying about $300 a month for. And now I am paying something, I'm off by a little bit, but it's something like $28 or $38 a month. So I pick, that new coverage happens to cover this drug better.
Okay, what happens now, folks? In case you're younger, don't worry about it. You're going to have to face this sometime. Okay, it may be 2 old codgers here talking about health, but we're forging the way for you out there. The fact is that you then hit a thing called the donut hole. And the donut hole isn't based upon your $28 that you pay for your copay. It's based on the $300. And once you hit $2,500 or $2,800, something like that.
No. That's not true. What it is based on is the full price of the drug.
That's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. It's based.
Well, the full price of this drug happens to be something like $1,500 a month.
So the fact is that
that's both
after about 2 months,
retail price of the drug.
After about 2 months, you fall into the donut hole.
Right.
You come out of it pretty fast, but you fall into it, and you have to pay the $300.
Right.
Now, my question is, how many people at our age, can afford $300 a month for a life-saving drug? Because without it, this is not a drug that's saving your life. I believe it's the drug that's keeping you from getting nauseous and sick because you need certain hormones, right?
They're enzymes.
Enzymes, yes. Yeah. So if you can't afford that, what do you do?
Well, you remember that guy Shkreli?
By the way, folks, you come out of the donut hole after about, what, $1,500 or something?
That's a little higher than that right now, but but together with the other things that are cheaper in this new program, I'm still going to save several $100s a month, even going to the donut hole.
Sure.
A year, several $100s a year. But do you remember that kid, Martin Shkreli?
Yeah.
Who bought the pharmacy company that had a drug that had been selling for something like $15, and he went up to $7,000 or something? That's something that we really need to face, because people don't have that money. And if you don't have it, there are programs with some of the drug companies that you can fill out a form, and if you don't make more than a certain amount of money, they'll give you the drugs for either for free or a very small amount of money. But that's at their whim. Mm-hmm. And nobody in the world, in the developed world, pays as much money for prescription drugs as we do. They're all much, much cheaper. And so we need real legislation to change this, because at the whim of a kid who bought a pharmaceutical company, he can price something out of, so that almost nobody can afford it. I don't know how he thinks that makes money.
However, they went. Can I say something? They went after this kid Shkreli, and they should have. It was a terrible thing that he did.
Yes.
But I had a drug I was using for irritable bowel syndrome that was $300 that eventually went up to $2,200 a month. isn't that approximately the same thing he did, but they're not going after them?
Well, they were not quite as outrageous as he was. He went from something that was under $100 a month to something like $7,000 or more a month.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm not positive about this because there's so much thrown at us from the Trump administration every day. Who can keep track of everything?
Yeah, right.
But I think in Trump's budget, the one he released a week ago, which of course every president has done this and it has absolutely no chance of becoming law. But I'm pretty sure that I read in the list of things it changes that there was some provision for keeping the cost of drugs down. I'd have to go look it up.
Yeah.
But I think it was one of the few good pieces of news in that budget. And it can't get through Congress, and it won't. But, unless we have to rely on all of those poor children in Florida who are really furious with the federal government, maybe when they take care of the gun problem, we can get them to take over for a few other problems.
Well, it has always bothered me that this government seems to be of a nature to want to go and do stuff which affects old people. Now what they're talking about, to take care of all the money they're losing on this so-called tax plan, they're thinking of killing Medicare, taking it from Medicare, taking it from Medicaid, taking it from
Social Security.
Social Security, which Social Security, quite frankly, is something that we put money into. They owe it to us.
It's, by the way, never call it an entitlement as they do. It is an earned benefit.
Right.
And Social Security happens to be the most popular federal program that we have that is pretty much across the board. Even all Republicans that somewhere in the 80s and 90s like Social Security.
Now, can I say something here to the audience, that you're not only an expert on pancreatic cancer, you're also an expert on aging, because you've had a blog for years called timegoesby.net, right?
Right.
And timegoesby.net is her blog, and I think you title it something to the extent of how it really is to get old. I mean,
the subtitle is What It's Really Like to Get Old.
Yeah. And
which, by the way, until this cancer thing happened, I didn't have a clue. I've come to realize now, after all these years.
Well, no, what you've gotten to is the part that you couldn't cover before, which is what happens when you then get one of the illnesses that have plagued people when they get older. And as we get older, we have illnesses that plague us. Some of them are simple, and some of them are massive. And you are now facing that. You've now faced that, and now you have another little piece of knowledge to throw in that kit bag of yours.
Well, let me tell you one of the ways I approached it, though. My normal way of anything like that hitting me, or even something that just, I think, affects a whole lot of old people, is to just dig deeply in the research and read every single thing I can read about it and learn everything there is to know. This was more personal than writing about. Yes, I get Social Security checks, but they're not going to kill me. Pancreatic cancer could. And so I made a decision when I was thinking all this, what this really means to me, and having to go through what obviously the surgery and upcoming months of chemo, how was I going to approach this? How much did I want to know? And at the place that was treating me, one of the leading pancreatic cancer surgeons in the world. The whole chemo clinic are just stuffed with employees there, from RNs to even the people who just check you in every time, that know more about this than I will ever know. So I made a decision to just do a superficial look at it. What is pancreatic cancer? How does it affect you? How is it treated? And I didn't dig much deeper than that, because I figure I was an amateur at pancreatic cancer, and these people, many of whom have worked there for 20 and 30 years, they're professionals.
Right.
They have seen God knows how many people with how many different kinds of cancer, and they know what works and what doesn't, to the extent that we, in general, understand that at all. So I just went with what they told me to do and did my best to follow their instructions. And I don't know if that's what got me where I am now, but it was the best I could do, and it seemed to work.
Yeah. But, getting back to the political question here, they seem to enjoy picking on old people. I mean,
Yes,
the
they
Republicans.
do.
I mean, and quite frankly, I've been arguing that we are not the people to fuck around with, and I'll tell you why. If they started going after Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, especially Medicare, and I say it for this reason, they are out to kill us. All right? Literally, they're out to kill us. So why shouldn't we do them the same favor and find people who are terminally ill or who are old and strap bombs to them? You know, because they have nothing left to lose.
I'd never go that far.
Because they have nothing left to lose. What I'm saying is, don't fuck with old people. Their assumption is we're not going to complain.
You know, we vote in greater numbers than younger people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, way up high, and I'm so encouraged by the young people in Florida, in Parkland.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That somebody is, these young kids. I mean, this is not college. This is only high school kids, and you see them on television being interviewed. And, you know, they're 14, 15 years old, and they are not going to give up on this. They are really furious about the gun laws. And this is a way when you and I can't get out, probably, and most old people just plain don't have the energy to get out and march and travel all over the place and do this stuff anymore. And that this, I'm just hoping, it's only a week old. I'm just hoping that we have a new generation of people that are going to stand up to the federal government or local if that's necessary.
Right.
And that will inform all of us, including us old people.
Yeah.
It will begin to make a difference if it works, you know. But they seem determined. They're amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've seen the horror of it, you know.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is, you know, and that's good, you know, because I'll tell you one thing: when you're a young person, you can get out and protest. That's the only reason why I feel that the government feels that, oh, well, what are the old people going to do? They're going to have protests. They're too old. They don't go out to marches anymore. And I have to agree. I don't go out to marches anymore either. You know, that is a young person's ability. You know, I remember, you know, I used to go to Washington for a demonstration. I'd sleep on somebody's floor overnight down there just to be able to march the next day. Somehow,
Right.
At my age, I want to know if there's a good hotel down there. You know, what kind of sleeping arrangements are there? Do they have a good mini bar? You know.
I know the feeling. But it maybe is a groundswell, you know, the beginning of a new era of protest.
See,
I mean, there's us old folks, but then there's the guns, and there's the new oligarchy that Trump has formed, and the tax, the tax rebates and the lowering of the taxes of already rich people. How much more do you need?
I'll tell you, the guy suddenly I've gotten the biggest respect for was Bill Gates, who today did an interview. And on the interview, he said, I want to pay more taxes. Why should I be paying less taxes? I'm rich. You know?
That's a really important point about.
And by the way, when did you
one of the things about Social Security
Yeah.
is that you stop paying into it when your salary hits, I think it's 130K.
Yeah.
And so that all the people who make more than 130K don't pay beyond, you know, beyond that.
There's a Social Security cap, and that cap is like 9,000 whatever that you pay in.
That's the cap.
Yeah,
that is the cap.
And after that, you don't pay anything.
And you don't. But that means that anybody up to $130,000 in salary pays on their entire salary, all of it.
Yes.
Why shouldn't people that make any amount of money pay on their entire salary?
Well, why shouldn't, if you're going to have this Social Security taken out, why does it have a cap? Don't have a cap, and then you don't ever have to. To begin with, there should be no reason, if you think about it mathematically, that we should not have enough money in the Social Security system to take care of everything. But what happened was they borrowed money from us to fund wars. And so, you know, Al Gore said it should be a locked box. Well, it never was a locked box. That was the problem. And so consequently, if everybody were just to pay X number of percentage, and it doesn't matter how much you make, there's no cap, we'd never have a problem paying Social Security. And we could probably fund Medicare with it too.
One of the additional problems that's come up since I started paying attention to this stuff 15 years ago is that this is a terrible thing to say because I think that should be far fewer babies in the world, but there aren't as many babies being born that are going to grow up and go to work. And that is going to enormously affect how much goes into Social Security and Medicare.
What do you mean aren't going to go to work? They just aren't going to be able to find jobs?
No, they aren't there to go to work. There aren't enough people to go to work.
Oh, I see. In other words, there are less babies being born.
That would cover the people who, Roosevelt designed the Social Security system so that current workers pay for the previous generation who has retired.
Yeah, right.
And that has worked perfectly fine until now. But now we have fewer and fewer younger people who are working. Fewer and fewer to do the working is what I'm saying. So that contributes to less money going into Social Security. So there are but there have always been, besides lifting the cap, a bunch of other tweaks that could save it. And another terribly important reason we need to save Social Security is something like only 19% of private employers supply pensions anymore, under 20%. People are paid so little for the past 10 or 15 years since the last recession that they get normal families with a couple of kids. They can barely pay the bills every month, let alone set aside anything for their retirement. So when Roosevelt set this up in 1935, the idea was that Social Security was the third leg of the stool, that you had your pension plan from where you worked and you had savings that you'd been able to do all your life.
Right.
Nobody can save anymore who's busy raising kids and trying to figure out how to get them through college.
Yep.
And so Social Security becomes the de facto retirement program, and it was never designed to be the whole retirement program, but it's turned into that.
So what do we do? People get old, and they've worked hard all their lives. It's not like they were slackers, but they never saved anything. And you can folks, you can only blame that on the fact that, hey, they just, they spent their money on their families, on sending their kids to school, and finally they get old and they see they didn't save enough money. That's not a fault. They work their asses off. Don't they deserve to be taken care of when they reach their maturity? And I think they do. I got to tell you, the most wonderful thing about my union, you remember AFTRA, don't you? Mm-hmm. Well, the most wonderful thing about my union was when I hit, I think, 75, I never had to pay membership dues anymore. At least give me something at this age, America, that I don't have to sit here and worry about where my next meal's coming from. I mean, I've got enough that I think I can take care of myself, but still, don't blame it on old people because they don't have the money now to take care of themselves when they spent their whole life working their asses off at menial jobs just trying to eke out a living, And
even not menial jobs. Twice in my life, because things come up with family that took most of my savings to help make better.
Yeah.
And that happens to all kinds of people all the time. Another one that comes along are medical expenses. Not everybody can even afford medical coverage. And so what little they have has to go when they get sick, has to go to pay for that if they can at all. What has happened is this morphed from this one part of a three-legged stool, Social Security morphed from that, into being the primary, if you're not rich, being the primary retirement income that you have. And we need to adjust how we pay for that to fit that new idea that it became. And there are a lot of smart people who have a lot of good ideas in addition to raising the cap, which won't entirely do it. But there are other good ideas that aren't going to cost any individual people a whole lot of money.
Right.
And it would be that then we would have plenty of money to take care of everybody as they got older. But we don't have a Congress that will do anything about this, and we haven't had for 6, 8, 10 years.
So can I?
Paul Ryan just wants to kill Social Security. Period.
I once my wife and I were doing a video, and we simply titled it on YouTube, not on YouTube, on Facebook. We titled it "Nobody Wants to Listen to Old People." And I honestly think that they dismiss old people when they have something to say about their problems and about what their needs are. There's a complete dismissal. You're going to die soon anyway, you know. We don't have to pay attention to you, you know. And
well, that goes on throughout. After a certain age, did you know that age discrimination in the workplace begins as young as 40 for men and as young as 35 for women?
Absolutely.
And try to get a job after 60. That's why I had to stop working at 63. I couldn't find anybody to hire me, and I was interviewing only with 20-somethings, and I looked like their grandmother.
How you described it is you went in for a job interview, and they looked at you like you were a Martian.
Yeah, because they were all 27 years old, and I looked like their grandmother to them. It didn't matter that I'd been working on the internet for 20 years at that point. That they just assumed that I couldn't. There's a whole lot of myths about old people that that they're too sick to show up to work, that they won't work hard, that they can't learn anything new. There's that famous, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. They've been applying to old people forever. It's just plain not true. So far, we'll see what happens in time. So far, anything new I've wanted to learn, I've been able to do.
Well, I've decided that with what I do now, I suck. But then again, I always did. So, what's the difference? I notice age affecting my performance to a certain extent more than the audience does. But it's a little more difficult for me. I have to concentrate a little more,
Well, in my case, it manifests itself by after 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I am both physically and brain dead. Anything that I have to accomplish in life that takes any physical effort or mental effort, I have to finish before
during the afternoon. Do you find at some point you doze off?
Oh, yeah. I was laughing with a friend on the phone just yesterday that he said he gets so angry with himself because he tries to watch. Now, remember, we are on the West Coast, different from you guys.
Right.
And he said, I can't even stay awake to watch Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC anymore. Lawrence O'Donnell is on at, I think, 8 o'clock here.
7 o'clock, I think, there. Yeah. Hey, listen, I just noticed we've way run out of time. But, I just love talking to you. And you always say to me, well, what are we going to talk about for 25 minutes? And then we start talking, and, before you know it, we haven't even started to hit the tip of the iceberg. But I think what you have to say is very important for people to hear. Yeah, don't dismiss yourself. I
don't know. I think that what I find is that that Social Security and Medicare even puts old people to sleep.
Well, but you can. I was at lunch today with my business manager, Gary Haber. And we said, the difference between a bunch of young people getting together and, old people getting together is young people getting together talk about how they got laid recently, and old people sit around talking about health and about health plans and about,
But a lot of that has come up because of this pancreatic cancer, and I'm speaking of learning new things. I mean, it's been just constant during these 8 months since it was first discovered of learning new stuff about the medical community and cancer itself and treatments and all of this stuff. Which, how do you not learn it when you're kind of in the middle of it? But what I've also discovered is that it's really interesting. There's a woman I know who in the past 10 years or so, I think it's in the past 10 years, has had something like 7 pretty good-sized surgeries. And I was talking with her once about sometime shortly after the surgery, my surgery, of how not just tired I was, fatigued to the bone. And she said that after one of her surgeries, when she was finally okay enough to go take a shower on her own, that all it was, hey, we all take showers almost every day, right? No big deal. She came out of that surgery wrapped in a towel, saying she didn't know anybody could suffer this much fatigue, and she just fell on the bed and wept. She was so tired. I know that.
You want to know something? I'll tell you this, and then we better get going because we're running out of time here, or we have run out of time, which is fine with me.
But I just want to say, I just find that stuff, first of all, empowering to know that I wasn't the only one it ever happened to.
What I was going to say is the worst thing I've ever had in the hospital was a while back. I got a kidney stone. They put me in the hospital for 4.5 days. This is minor stuff. This is baby stuff. This is, you can laugh at me for having a kidney stone stuff. But the fact was, I thought that 4.5 days in the hospital, you get out of the hospital and you've been in bed, you've been under morphine for that amount of time. You slept like crazy. By the time you get out of the hospital, you're going to have more energy than you ever had before. I went right home and slept. You know, I mean, hospitals are not restful. They are not restful, especially when you got a nurse at 3 o'clock in the morning waking you up saying, it's time for your blood draw. Hey, listen, right. I love talking. Let's do this more often. You are so good. You are so smart. You know, I mean,
come on.
I really loved being the dumb one in the family, you know.
No. There was always Bert.
There was always Bert. We had a cat named Bert. Bert was the stupidest cat that ever lived on the face of the earth.
He used to go sit in the corner of a room and stare at the corner for an hour.
Hey, I love you, Ronnie, and let's do this again soon. I really mean it. And stick around when we're through here so I can say goodbye to you. Ladies and gentlemen, a woman who I can proudly say used to be my wife, and of course, I'm sure she doesn't have to do the same with me because for her, it was probably the worst decision she ever made.
But you all said, you know, I never married again, so I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I spoiled it for everybody else. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Ronnie Bennett, thank you so much, Ronnie. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Okay.